Hi guys, welcome back to Our Wyoming Life. My name is Mike and we have a special guest with us today. He's right back here and you may remember him from a previous video. This is Lance from Hustler Equipment and we're here with the Hustler feeder, which you guys saw as we tested some hay. Lance, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on again, Mike.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. You made the long trip out here to come and hang out with us and show us some really cool new stuff that Hustler Equipment is working with. We're also going to go down and check in with the cows because most people don't know, but you're a cattle nutritionist as well, correct?
Yes, that's the whole background. That was actually a bulk of my career, was dealing with beef nutrition, primarily with cow-calf operations across mostly west of the Mississippi, but a little bit on the east side as well.
Wow. Wow. Now, what kind of school do you have for that? Do you...
School of Hard Knocks, pretty much. So grew up in a farming background, and then I went off to, I was going to attempt to go off to university, ditched that idea and went straight into the working environment and came back to my family operation. All my, if you go back into my dad's uncles and all that, they're all in beef. Okay. And whether it's a feedlot or cow-calf, there's kind of a mixture of different stuff. So went straight back into that, into a family business back at home, doing the nutrition thing, consulting with ranchers across the country.
So you learned on the job mostly?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
That's how I learned, and I'm still learning every single day. We're here with the Hustler feeder, which we're getting ready to put back into service. You're not going to believe this, but we have snow due in about a week, and that means that we could get into a situation where we're going to end up having to feed the cows. Obviously, we're in the middle of this drought, which has made things extremely hard, and that's why we invited Lance up here to be able to take us out and take a look at the cows and talk about the cattle nutrition that we have to look at. We're also going to look at the hay that we're getting in from Missouri and Nebraska. I've got some preliminary nutritional values out of that hay that we'll be able to look at. And we're also going to talk about supplements a little bit, along with how this feeder actually helps us be the most efficient feeders that we can of our cows. Lance, let's walk over here and take a look at your nice new shiny RV. We've got another piece of equipment here on the back. We're going to come back and talk about this, but this is really quick. This is an applicator sprayer.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is for what?
It's primarily built specifically with the cattle rancher in mind. So guys that are spraying their hay fields, guys that are spraying their pastures, whether it's a chemical application or a fertilizer, whatever it might be. It might even be an organic product that you're putting on. But there's a lot of 3-point sprayers on the market, but generally these companies are going down the price point trap, and so they're built quite cheap. Well, if you get out here in rough country, they fall apart in a hurry. So we decided to build one for the rancher.
Nice, very cool. We're going to come back and look at that. We're going to jump in the pickup and we're going to drive down. First, we're going to stop and take a look at some. You want to look at some hay?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, let's go look at some hay. Lance, this is our hay. We have hay coming in pretty much from, we've gotten 3 loads so far from Missouri, and we've gotten 1 load from Nebraska. And one thing that really blows me away is the difference in hay depending on where it comes from in the United States. When this stuff came in, and I think you saw the video because we used your piece of equipment to go out and roll this out and feed it. I didn't know what it was. I was like, what is all this stuff? Now, some of it you can recognize right away. You see like the crested or whatever it is, some stem grass. But there's also red clover in here. That's what this is.
Oh, yeah.
Some red clover, which I'd never seen before. You see, probably being in the hay business, you got to see all kinds of different hay.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like back in the nutrition days, dealing with ranchers, we were always talking to them about how can they get the most out of what they've got. So they might say, well, I've got this type of hay, I've got this native grass, and then I've got these hay fields that are improved. And they'll use all different things. And I remember talking to a guy down in Georgia, and he says, yeah, I just need some help on how to use my hay the right way so that I can get the maximum out of it. And I said, well, what are you primarily dealing with? And he said, peanut hay. That was a whole new one to me.
Really?
I went and looked at it. It looked about like alfalfa, but with lots of dirt in it.
Okay.
And a few peanuts.
So when they roll that out, it's got to be dust.
There's a lot of dust, a lot of dirt. You can't feed it to anything other than beef cows, basically. Okay. The beef cow can handle it because she can lick up a little dirt without.
It's amazing what cows will eat. This hay here, actually one of those stacks down there, I had to make a phone call and I got a preliminary test that it came in between 14 and 16% protein, which isn't really that bad.
That's fantastic.
When you're talking about cattle nutrition, how important is protein? Is that at the top of the list when you're talking about nutrition? I mean, obviously you've got fill, and organic matter that fills up the cow's belly and creates heat through digestion and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to nutrients, what is the number one nutrient for cows?
No, that's a good question. So protein and energy are kind of the two biggest ones that everybody's looking at. Another thing that a lot of hay is traded on is TDN, or total digestible nutrients. Okay. So you might have something that's got some decent value in it, but it might not be that digestible. It might be a pretty tough grass, or it might be a pretty a thick, stemmy thing with a lot of lignin in it, which is fiber and hard to break down. And so a lot of it's traded on TDN. So it's interesting to look at your hay when it comes to protein. When we're looking at our cows this time of the year, in fact, even maybe we should have been doing this a month ago, is looking at our cows, looking at the body condition of the cow, and scoring it on a BCS, or the body condition score scale. And in the U.S. here, it's a scale of 1 to 9. So 1 being a very, very thin cow that's not gonna probably last.
that one's on its way out.
On its way out.
Yeah.
And then you've got the big, a score of 9 would be a show cow, something that's ready for
which
show.
Could be on its way out.
It could, exactly. Well, and that's exactly my point, Mike, is that when it comes to the protein side of it, you can overdo it, especially if you've got a pregnant cow and you're coming into that third trimester. If you're feeding really, really heavy on the protein side, she's putting a lot of that nutrition right directly to her calf. And you're going to have a lot of calving issues. You're going to have big 90-pound calves, and she's going to have a lot of trouble calving. So we do need to be cognizant of where our cows are and what the condition score is. Typically, most people like to keep it around a 5, mainly because it's a good spot to keep them. It's relatively economical to get them there in the spring and summer. In fact, apart from a drought year, you just about get them there without trying.
We're going to go down and take a look at the cows, but before we get down there, how important is getting your hay tested?
I think it's really important. I mean, there's a cost associated with it, but it's kind of like having a dashboard on your car. If you're going on a trip, you want to know, how many more miles have I got to go before I run out of fuel. And so knowing exactly what you're feeding them can help you be more economical. I mean, you can think about, okay, hey, this came in at 14% protein, so I might be able to supplement even a little bit of straw, potentially.
True, yeah. And we're going to talk more about some equipment that can actually help you do that. One of the interesting things when we came here to the ranch was cake, or range cubes, or whatever. Why do they call them range cubes when they're round? I never did understand that.
Good question.
When we came here, it was cake. We're caking the cows constantly. We've got 20% cake, and we're pouring 2 pounds into them every single day. And I think that's where it helps us the most in knowing how much protein that we have. And I think that's why we became so fixated on protein, was to be able to say, hey, if we've got 16% protein here, I don't need to be feeding 20% protein cake every single day. I might only need to feed it every third day, or maybe every other day, depending on what we're mixing this with then, and being able to bring protein. Is there any way to test hay on the fly to be able to know exactly what you're feeding day to day?
The best thing is to, like you've got it set up here, Mike, is actually ideal, because you've got it in stacks based on where it came from, and it should all be relatively the same, depending on, if it's the same cutting. And so getting it tested like you're doing ahead of time, and then just knowing that, hey, stack number 1 is X, stack number 2 is that. So you might be feeding a couple of bales a day. You might want one of stack 1 and one of stack 3 to make that perfect ration.
That makes total sense. I'm doing things good. Look at me go. All right, we're going to jump back in the truck, and we're going to head back about 5 miles. We do have hunters on the ranch, so if I see those guys, I'll get you guys a peek at them. We're going to go down and we're going to look at some cows and look at some different body condition scores. Lance's going to teach us what the difference is and how to judge a cow based on how their body looks. And what I'd like to do too is be able to take a look at a few cows and kind of say, hey, this is what a cow should look like in the third trimester, and this is what a cow should look like maybe in the second trimester, when they don't need that much nutrition, or in late fall when you can kind of pull back the feed just a little bit. They're on about 2,300 acres, which is wide open. We're actually grazing them through with water. There's only 2 water sources down there. We're still using the water truck to be able to move them around and make them graze more efficiently, because cows really, they're kind of lazy. They only want to go so far from water, and they'll practically starve themselves to death before they have to go a little bit, an extra 10 feet to get some more grass. So we're going to go down and take a look at them. We're going to talk more about that, and then we're going to circle back to the ranch, and we're going to talk about some of the equipment that Hustler has to help us out, to help all of us feed more efficiently and have healthier animals in the long run. Ready to go?
Let's go.
Let's go. Alrighty, we're down here with the cows on what we call summer pasture. There's not a whole lot of pasture left where we're at right now. The cows, you can see them, well, you can't, maybe you can see them on camera, way up on that hill up there. And that's more where we're putting out water right now, is up over that hill. Trying to get a lot of them to move that way, but you can see cows are stubborn.
Yeah.
And over here we've got lick barrels for them to munch on. We're also taking a look at what we call the body condition score that Lance was talking about, and right there, that is a decent looking cow.
Yeah, that one there's probably a 7 or maybe even an 8. She looks really good. If you look at her brisket, it's quite full and there's no bones poking out the back. A couple of things to look at is the tailbone. That one's filled in really nice, and then the pins, which is the 2 bones that stick out the back just below the tailbone, and then of course their hip bones, and you can't see any of that on her, so she's got to be sitting at least at a 7 or 8.
Is there a way to tell age of a cow from a BCS score? Do you see cows that tend to move a certain direction? They get fatter, they get thinner?
Yeah, it's a little hard. I mean, because a lot of it does come down to how you're feeding them and taking care of them. But generally, an older cow is going to start to struggle to keep up. A lot of times because of her teeth. She just can't quite get everything that a younger cow can get.
Let's walk down here and see if we can take a look at this red cow down here. And we can kind of look at her body condition score. From the back, you can see the pin bones, which are just to the left and right. It's actually the top of their hip, I'm guessing. I'm hoping.
Yep.
So I don't sound like a complete idiot. And that's one of the things that you're looking at with BCS, correct?
Yep. So you're looking at, so if you look across, you can see on the backbone, that's the first thing to look at. And then you've got the hip bones just before you get back to the tail. And that's important just to see how sharp they are. And then you've got your tailbone, which runs right back and into the tail. And then the 2 pins are just right on either side. So you see that little kind of a pin poking out on either side of her tail. So looking at all those, and then of course the rib cage. If you're starting to see rib cage, you're getting down into, probably a 3 or something.
Oh, really? So that's a good indication of where you're at. And that's the hardest part for me is I start looking at BCS scores. I get lost in the middle.
Yeah.
Like, I know what a bad cow looks like.
Yeah.
I know what a fat cow looks like, but I'm like in the middle, it's like, where is she? And so that's my hardest thing. So if this red cow right here, where would you put her?
I think she's probably at like a 4.
Okay. And she's a smaller cow too. She's a smaller frame cow. Does that have anything to do with it, or does it really matter?
Not really on the frame. I mean, obviously a smaller frame cow out in this country is a good thing, just because they can travel a little better and they consume a lot less feed.
Until it comes time to calve sometimes.
Yeah, that can be a little challenge. But the other side of it too is BCS scoring is discretionary. I mean, it's definitely just what's coming to mind in your head. There are guides, and there's some really good guides online if you Google it. But yeah, generally it's a lot to do with your eye and what you're looking at. Well, it's really interesting. If you look at, I can't remember what it's called. There's a certain scale, but but Mother Nature works in a way where it's survival first, then production, and then reproduction. So what that means is a cow, as she's going into winter, whenever you're feeding her, the initial thing is it's coming back to survival. So it's building up herself first. Then it goes to production, which with a cow-calf pair, that would be milk production and then taking care of the calf. And then the very last thing that she's going to put her energy and efforts into doing is reproduction. So if a cow is losing condition, the first thing she's going to do is not breed. And if she's continuing to lose, the next stage is she's going to stop producing to take care of her calf, because she's just all about, hey, I got to stay alive.
Right.
And that's just nature. And so as you're coming through the winter, like we said earlier, you want to make sure that they're in decent condition going into the winter, because it's going to be hard to make it up. And you don't want to be feeding a lot of high protein forages either, because she'll be putting a lot of that into her calf, like we mentioned, and building an oversized calf, which can lead to calving trouble. But then as you come right up into that 3rd trimester, that's when you can do a lot of what's called fetal programming. So the most important thing, fetal programming is just it's kind of probably a funny sounding word for developing the calf, growing the calf before it's born. So the most important thing there is nutrition, because that's going to be developing that calf, and it's going to be how quick it responds when it's born and develops. And then so you want that cow, as soon as she calves, you really want her gaining in condition.
Okay.
And so, because the next thing is breeding season.
Right.
And so even if she's in a low body score condition, body condition score. If you've got her going up, she's so much more likely to breed back.
That makes sense. When we're working through our winter feeding program, we tend to save that higher TDN right before calving, and we're boosting milk production. We're hopefully helping that calf out, or that fetal calf out a little bit, and usually that third trimester is where we try to get our best feed coming in, and for us that really means the alfalfa feed that we're trying to push at that point. So we can kind of, like you said earlier with straw, where you can supplement with straw, which really has like zero nutritional value,
right.
but it's filling them up, it's keeping them warm, and it's keeping things moving, and keeping them healthy in the long run.
Well, one thing to always pay attention to is that cows need a certain amount of dry matter. So they have a dry matter requirement, and typically it might be between 2 and 2.5% of their body weight. So if you've got really high quality feed, well then you can start supplementing a little bit of straw just to get that dry matter intake up. And your point on the cake, just earlier you were talking about the cake and the cost of cake. That has skyrocketed. It's gone through the roof in price. So I'm talking with a lot of producers about feeding, maybe an average to lower quality feed, and then supplementing with a very high quality feed like an alfalfa or some other legume that's got some good protein and energy values and is digestible. Because the advantage there is that you're actually, not only are you supplementing the protein, but you're also getting some of that dry matter requirements. So if let's say you got to feed 25 pounds of hay per day to your cow, well, if you're feeding 5 pounds of alfalfa, that's 5 pounds of her dry matter intake requirement coming in. And then the other 20 can be made up with hay. Whereas feeding a pound or two of cake, that doesn't necessarily equate to the same thing.
All right, we're getting ready to wrap things up down here with the cows. We're going to head back, and we're going to show you some of that equipment that Lance brought with him. But one quick thing that I wanted to touch on really quick was when you're talking about body condition score, there's got to be an optimal place to be. Like we all have like BMI and all this kind of stuff that you're supposed to be keeping track of. Supposed to be. For a cow, where do they need to be? What's the optimal place to keep a cow?
Yeah, that's good. It's and they can vary depending on your feedstuffs that you've got available to them and the grazing that they've got available. But you really, it's going to be really difficult to bring them back, or I should say expensive to bring them back if they get down into that 3 or less.
Right.
That's you're really starting to hurt that animal, and it's not really the optimum performance for her because she's starting to reserve just for survival mode. So you really want to keep them into that 4 or better. But on the other hand, if you start getting them up into 8 or 9, that's you shouldn't need to have a cow in that condition unless you're in show cattle.
Right, you don't need a 2,000-pound Black Angus mom.
It's going to be very expensive to keep her around and to maintain her like that. And if you might look at her and she's in a really good condition, she might be an 8, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to bring her down to a 5. Well, if you do that at the wrong time of the year, you'll miss breeding, or she won't be taking care of her calf. You just won't get the optimum performance.
Yeah, it's all about timing. There's a lot of timing involved. When it does come to timing, and when you're talking about feeding, obviously feed is in different types and different methodologies and stuff like that. And honestly, what you can get sometimes. I mean, that's what we're looking at this year, is talking about being able to do it the most efficient way that we can. We talked earlier about mixing straw. Hustler Equipment has a way that you can actually feed more than one type of feed at a time. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a couple different ways to do it, and this is one of the things that I just love about the Hustler products is if you take the chainless TX205, that machine that Mike's feeding with, that you're feeding with, that's one way to do it. So you might load up a bale of pretty poor quality hay, maybe your worst stuff. You put that one into the feeding chamber, and then you stab a second bale, and that might be your highest quality stuff. It might be an alfalfa or whatever it is, and you can string it out. That's the advantage of the Hustler, is it keeps it long stem so that you're not losing all your leaves and your nutrition. And it's also spending a little bit more time in the rumen, which allows those good bugs in the rumen to extract more of that nutrition out. So you're optimizing the value of that hay. So you can string that out a long ways. And then you can turn around, load that second bale, and top dress that and come all the way back. And then you've got a mix of the two feeds. And otherwise, if you just put all your good feed in one spot, it'll be your boss cows that get all that good feed, and the ones that need it the most, your poorer doing cows, don't get any of it. And then if you're on a big operation, we're actually just this year we're launching in the North American market a very, very large product, the feeding wagon called the Combi Wagon, and that's a machine that you can feed you know, round bales, square bales, silage, loose hay, whatever you want, even grain. You can just dump it all in there. So it's kind of like a mixer wagon, but you can go anywhere, and it's all hydraulically driven, so it takes very little power to operate, and you can feed multiple types of feed. So we'll give you a little bit of a glimpse of the combi wagon to check out.
That's very cool. Very cool. We're gonna head back home and say goodbye to these girls here. This one back here is still eating.
Yeah, they're going after those tubs, aren't they?
That's just a light. They do look pretty dang good for being.
They do. I'm
impressed.
Cows. Yeah, for when you look at what's not out here, that's very, very sparse.
Alrighty guys, we're back here at the shop. Nice uneventful ride on the way home, and we didn't get shot by a hunter, so that's always good. We're heading back over here to the Hustler Equipment. Do you have a name for your RV yet? Have you named this thing?
Yeah, well, hey, you know what, audience? Let's get a name for the Hustler RV, because we don't have one.
That's something that, yeah, we can do that. Let's name the Hustler RV. Let me get you a quick look here. This is Lance's home away from home, as he's out traveling around the U.S. Showing off what Hustler has to give. But it does need a name. Now it kind of looks. I was going to say we got to pick something that's not copyrightable. I was going to say Mini, but that doesn't work because I'm sure somebody would sue us over that one. But while you guys come up with that, put that down in the comments. In the meantime, we're going to take a look at this thing. Now this is a sprayer. It's a 3-point mounted sprayer. It's actually a PTO driven, but obviously. What do you use it for? Why do you need it?
So the biggest thing is one of the things that we identified. Obviously, we're working primarily with farmers and ranchers, and we're dealing with hay feeding equipment. Well, the very beginning of the story starts with growing hay. Right. And so there's a lot of farmers and ranchers out there that want to maximize production of their land. So they might be spraying, you know, some sort of organic type of product, or they might be spraying, you know, like an herbicide to keep the weeds down, or an insecticide to get rid of grasshoppers, or a fertilizer to actually just fertilize the ground. Mm-hmm. Traditionally, in the U.S. market, when you look at it, there's 1,000,001 people making a 3-point sprayer, but it's usually a little chintzy painted steel frame, right, with just a round tank strapped to it. Well, the problem is we're dealing with rough country here. We're spraying pastures, we're spraying hay fields, and it's chemical. So if it's just painted steel, you're getting corrosion, and sometimes we've heard stories of people that have a sprayer that's 1 year old and the boom won't even fold out. They've had to cut it off. So what we decided to do to help these farmers and ranchers is, hey, let's build our own. Let's make something that's going to be built for rough country, so it's built strong, but yet you can take quite a bit of capacity on the 3-point. Mm-hmm. And so we started with a galvanized frame and skid plate, so that even if you're going over rough country, you're not beating the heck out of it. And it's massive frame. And then you can see on the booms, this is a fully hydraulic boom here with just the twist off nozzles, so you can switch them out for whatever you're doing. And then if you look at how it's built, is you've got this massive square tubing of galvanized steel, and the nozzles are all protected. So you've got nozzle protection, so if you're hitting ruts and bumps and you're whipping and smacking the ground, you've actually got a boom that can handle it. And then all hydraulic, so you're doing everything from the cab. A couple of cool things that you'll notice is that it's got a storage container with you, so you can actually, this one here has got a foam marker in it, but if you didn't have the foam marker on it, you could put your extra chemical concentrates in there to bring it with you. And you've also got a cam lock system where you can actually suck from you can put a hose on there and suck from a well or a water tank to get fresh water. Oh. And then the other thing is you've got a freshwater, just a wash hand station, so if you get chemical on your hands, you can get that off right away. And then an extra storage box for bringing your extra nozzles or any tools that you need. And then a very, very strong, solid plastic tank, so that you've got it going up this way to keep all your weight as close as you can to the tractor. So a lot more things we could talk about, but that's the long and short.
Oh, that's very cool. Very cool. Hustler's actually kind of being innovative in the entire hay feeding industry by going all the way back to the beginning. And also we talked about that combi wagon, so we're going to show you some more pictures of that. Anything else you wanted to add about that thing?
About the combi wagon?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the biggest thing with the combi wagon is it just gives you that versatility of being able to really travel anywhere. It's really versatile, and it's built with massive walking axle and tires, so you can go out into the rough country with a full load of feed. And they're big, so they're handling the smallest one we make is 11-ton capacity all the way up to 19-ton capacity. So it's even the biggest one that we make will handle up to 14 big square bales. So it's if you need to get a lot of capacity or maybe multiple types of feed out there and feed it efficiently in that long narrow windrow like we talked about in the last video, that's the way to do it.
And one thing you told me about was you guys actually broke a world record with the combi wagon. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we did. It was really awesome. We actually got fully set up, and we thought, the best way to show what this thing can do is to set a world record. And so we did. We had a bunch of, it was all silage bales that we were feeding, and we had 8 hours, and we had a third-party survey crew come in, and there was a lot of criteria that we set to make sure that it was legit. And they videoed for 8 hours straight, and this is loading, travel time, feeding time, all together. In 8 hours we fed out 192 bales and set a world record.
Wow, that is amazing. All right, well, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
I'm looking forward to getting the Hustler feeder out again. I know the cows are looking forward to it too. But they do look good, and thanks for coming and actually teaching us about the body condition score and nutrition with cattle. Obviously, it's a huge spectrum.
Very much so.
There's really no way to know everything that you need to know, but I do find that if you learn a little bit here and there, eventually you forget more than you know anyway, and you're always learning as you go. I don't think there's any ranchers that I've met that know every single thing, and it's every single year. Just like when we hook up the Hustler, I got to relearn how to feed with it. You have to do that every single year. I do it whether it's calving, feeding, anything. Any new season on the ranch, you do have to sit down and go, okay, now what do I need to worry about to be able to get these cows through the next stage of their development? So
absolutely, ranching is an awesome occupation, but it's got to be profitable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not sustainable. And someone told me once that the moment you think you're finished learning, you're finished. So
there you go. We should put that on a t-shirt.
There we go. There we go.
All right, be sure to comment below. Let's name Lance's his RV for him that he gets a chance his rolling office. How much time do you spend in this thing a year nowadays?
Well, I'll tell you what, we got it just less than a year ago, and it had like 370 miles on it, and we've got just a tick under 30,000 on it.
Oh wow, so you've been up and moving with it. Maybe you'll see it roll through your area before too long. We're going to put together some names for you. We'll send them off to you, and then we'll announce a winner coming up, and maybe we'll be able to get you some Hustler swag, some t-shirts or hats or something like that.
Sounds good.
Very cool.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lance. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
We'll see you next time.
All righty.
It's a cute little thing. I kind of like the name Minnie, but I think that the Disney Corporation might have a problem with that. Guys, thank you very much for hanging out with us today. Hopefully you learned something about animal nutrition and the body condition score. That's a very important thing that we look at all the time. There's more to cattle ranching than just putting out food and making sure that the cows eat, as hopefully Lance conveyed to you guys. Thank you very much for hanging out with us once again. Be sure to subscribe, follow along as we continue to explore the ranch life and escape the ordinary. All kinds of good stuff coming up, including our weekly vlog here on Sunday. Be sure to catch us for that. So thanks, guys. Have a great week. We'll see you next time right here on Our Wyoming Life.